This is the Nimmo road, a few kilometres beyond the Nimmo bridge. It's an all-weather road but has sharp stones and sticky orange dust. The road ascends to Nimmo Hill, which is the highest point on this ridge. A power transect is followed. This is Nimmo Hill, and the turn-off is to the right. If we were to continue straight along this road, following the power lines, we would eventually reach the Gungarlin River camping area. But snowy plains are to the right. Grazing infrastructure is past. And now the steep descent to the river. There are many large drainage humps. The elevation of the river is 150 metres lower than Nimmo Hill. Seems to be mainly grazing properties out this way. These are the snowy plains. Let's just pause here and I'll point out some landmarks. This one in the middle is definitely Cesjacks Mountain, and I'm pretty sure this is Spencer's Peak on the right, with the Bull's Peaks here on the left. Except for Cesjacks, which passes out of view, we see these landmarks further along the track. And now approaching the first gate, which is the beginning of private land and the Gungarlin River crossing. I must apologise for the length of this video. I wanted to show the road conditions and I couldn't get it much shorter than this. Now for the crossing. I'm not very experienced at four-wheel driving, so I was being extra careful. I know this crossing isn't difficult, but it's better to be safe than sorry, so I walked it first. From the wheel tracks, it seemed to be crossed in an arc, bending slightly downstream. Nice and shallow here, but deeper upstream. Now checking out the exit point. The passage on the right seemed less eroded than the one on the left. Another view from the side. I'm driving an X-Trail, which is probably the bare minimum for this trip. I used to hear of two-wheel drive being okay out here, but it would be risky, and there was a steep pinch late in the drive that would be a showstopper without high clearance. The catchment of the Gungarlin River drains from the entire Snowy Plains area. If heavy rain came through, it would definitely cause problems at the crossing. While I was here, a group of anglers showed up and parked near the river. They crossed the fence on this step bridge and headed upstream. I saw a sign there, and here it is. Pause the video to read the details. Then some cars came through and gave me a demonstration. Now it was my turn. Here we go. I'm not very experienced at this, but keeping the power on seems sensible. Of course, the car is in all-wheel drive mode. No worries. The river crossing was smoother than a lot of the rest of the drive. Visible on the left is a narrow metal bridge that looks like this. Must be a crossing for high water. This drive is late in the day. The season is autumn, when the rivers are at their lowest. I suppose this is the beginning of the Snowy Plains fire trail. Up ahead is a sign explaining the purpose of the road, that being a fire maintenance trail. The sign confirms access through private land. Also requests for us to be careful as the road is minimally maintained. Here's the full sign. Pause to inspect. I guess this is an easement road. In my experience, easements are often contentious, even between neighbours, who sometimes go to war over them. But we are allowed shared access within the boundaries of the road. It rained a couple of days ago, but the road surface is dry. The road now heads northwest for about 9 kilometres. I took it slow and steady as the road is fairly rough. The trip took nearly 3 hours from the Gungarlin River to the park gate. Every now and then the road splits at a problem area. I probably should have stayed to the left here. Here's the next gate. That gate was closed on the way out. In the distance there's a high point on the ridge, and from looking at the map I think it's Mount Hudson. Gungarlin Dam is on the other side of it. This is typical of the terrain along the drive, open plains and forested ridgetops. I've got the rooftops map for this one. As just mentioned, the snowy plains are divided by intermittent forested high ground. These stones may be a property boundary. Another sign reminds us that we are crossing private property and that we shouldn't leave the road edge. Now approaching the next gate. That gate had a "Please close" sign on it and was closed on the way out. All very confusing, but I didn't come across any cattle in this paddock. Most of the property gates have identification images for orange hawkweed, which has been spreading through this area in recent years. The plants are more easily spotted in summer and autumn from the flowers, which resemble dandelions. They're a cold-adapted plant that displace all other vegetation when they take hold. I've left this whole hill climb in because it's typical of the roughness of the roads on the slopes. The road surface shakes the car considerably, and anything loose in the vehicle is likely to bounce around. I could be wrong, but it didn't seem as if anyone lives permanently out here. I've heard of this whole area being treated like a group of snow leases, meaning that cattle are grazed here mostly in the warmer months. Even though I didn't see anyone on the drive in, there were signs of maintenance and upkeep all over the place. Again, leaving the forested uplands for another stint across the plains. At the next high ground, the track was gradually becoming more difficult to negotiate. This incline was quite rough. This section of forested high ground was longer, like a small plateau. Here the cattle reappeared, the first since the river crossing. The road is very uneven, occasionally having a high and low edge, and the hill climbs are consistently rough. certainly not as harsh as some dirt tracks, but the way becomes rougher as we progress. This area is not without its beauty, and there are many big old trees on the ridge tops. Other than the shaking to pieces of the car, this is actually a very nice drive. We see the occasional hut along the journey, and I think there was one up to the right of the next gate. Differing personalities on the various properties. Here the first cattle on the road. Thanks, darlings. Pretty sure that's Spencer's Peak in the distance. This frost plain is longer. It joins up with another one further on. There's a hut on the right and a creek crosses the road ahead. There are 2 more creek crossings, and this is the first. This is a tributary of the Bull's Peak Creek. It was shallow, but the riverbed was sandy and soft. The larger tributary of the creek is further on. But before that, on the flat ahead, is another gate. These puddles are from the rains a few days ago. This type of soil would take a while to dry out after rain came through, especially in winter when the sun isn't as hot. I think that was one of the things they warned us about on the entrance sign, that driving here in winter could damage the road. This is the Bull's Peak Creek. I noticed a metal footbridge on the left. Thanks, darling. Yeah, this one's deep on the left and more shallow on the right. The crossing was slightly deeper than the Gungarlin River, but had soft sand. Yeah, that was really soft. That'd be the one to watch out for. Now the road was disappearing entirely in some places. A little further on was another rough section. The approaches to the forested high grounds were consistently rough. In general, the road becomes rougher further along. More of this same section, which was steeper, longer, and rougher. Steepest, it's the longest hill. This part would be no fun without high clearance. So glad to reach the top. This is the next plain, and once again a view to Spencer's Peak. And that high ridge we see up to there is probably the Cesjacks ridge. That's where the park gate is. We don't start the climb up there until beyond the final gate. There's actually a hut just off to the left here. I stopped for a picky. On my map, this is probably Flanagan's hut. I think those are the Bulls Peaks. Except for the direction we've come from, this area is surrounded by National Park. More friendly cattle. They're all pretty placid. I've seen them get badly spooked by cars in other places. The cattle at Mount Barney spring to mind. They bolt at the sight of a person. Thank you, cutie. So gorgeous. No worries. Hey, young fella. They're certainly not slowing me down. I'm going at walking pace anyway. As I said, it took me near 3 hours to reach the park gate. There's that high ridge again. The park gate's up that way. And this ridge on the left is where we'll begin to ascend. This one on the right is Mount Hudson. That would surely be for the bloke that ran the snowy scheme. The range separates us from Yucambine Dam. As we can see, the going gets no easier. Again, another example of the track surface. Still heading northwest, as we can see from the position of the sun. We'll turn back to the southwest higher up. First is this final property gate. This property has a lot more accessible bushland. I think the owners might have had some problems with hunters up here. This isn't national park, so it's legal. There's deer and pigs all through the bush nowadays. A sign on a gate is a form of notification and can be used in a court of law. It allows an owner to prosecute if they find someone on their land but off the easement road. It represents fair warning. The road climbs 200 metres in elevation to the park gate. The final hills are the roughest part of the drive. I wouldn't be surprised if this barrier was closed after heavy snow. I began to have problems with the camera battery, and a short steep incline with a sharp pinch at the top of it later in this ascent didn't make it into the recordings. It would certainly have stopped a car without large wheels and high clearance. On this property were signs of a recent controlled burn. Unfortunately, feral pigs have moved into this area. They've dug up a lot of earth here. The road winds about a lot on the way up to the high ground. I found a few things dented under the car once this was all over. Nothing serious though. On the way back, I got a few images of a junction area near here. This spot must be halfway to the ridge crest from the last property gate. A trail here continues north across private land and probably joins the Grey Mare Trail after 4 kilometres. This one isn't an easement and the gate is locked. The Cesjacks Ridge and the park gate are up that way. After more problems with the camera battery, I missed the final climb, which was the most rugged of all. That part of the road was atrocious. Yeah, this other end of the drive's been pretty bad. That part of the climb was pretty bad, but it's improved on the ridge crest. The road heads southwest for the final kilometre. This is the Cesjacks Ridge. It runs for quite a few kilometres out towards the Bulls Peaks. We only drive a short section of it. Here the road has deep wheel ruts and a high grassy mound in the centre. Sometimes I had to drive on the grass because the ruts were so deep. We actually climbed near to 1700 metres up here. It was freezing on the clear nights. I camped in the park. The Cesjacks hut has a dry compost toilet. The gate is locked at the park boundary, so we have to park on this side of it. That centre mound can really scrape sometimes. I know it's not the outback, but this area is quite isolated and any vehicle problems would be hard to deal with. Probably tyre repairs would be the most likely trouble. Looks like the park gate up there. And here approaching the park gate. Unfortunately, vehicles can't enter the park without a key to the padlock. So there we go. That covers the drive across the snowy plains to the Cesjacks Ridge. Adios.